Hey everyone, it's Charlie Morgan here and welcome back to another video. So in today's video, I want to answer a question that I keep receiving multiple times a week. And the question is basically, what's your story or what's your background? Where have you come from? Now, what I don't want to do, I've sort of put off this video for a long time because I don't really want this channel to be about me, and I don't want it to be a vehicle for my ego or my narcissism to run wild. As I'm sure you're aware, a lot of people tend to do that on YouTube. I want this channel to basically be a mine of content that you can use to derive value so you can grow your own agency. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Charlie. I've built and scaled a marketing agency. It's called NorthFlow Consulting. We've signed over 350 high-ticket retainer and consulting clients, and now I help other people build and scale their own agencies. And what I've noticed is a lot of people struggle to build an agency, and I don't want you to be one of them. Now, I struggled very hard to build my agency, and so today, I'm recording this video because it explains my story, and it's basically like an hour long, and it's going to tell you exactly what I've done and my entire story and really what I've learned along the way. And I want people to know that I don't want this video to be like oh, this is all about me, I'm great, look at me, I'm amazing. I want it to just showcase how much work you have to do to actually get any level of success. Success is relative. When I look at my life, I don't really consider myself to be particularly successful because as soon as you think you're successful, you stop trying to actually grow. And so I don't really see myself as successful anyway. Once you realize that £1 million or $1 million isn't a lot of money, the world will start to open up to you. And I've realized that recently. I've had this question a couple of times a week now on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn of people saying, hey, what's your story? How did you get here? And so I never wanted to make this video, but I'm making it because people keep asking, and obviously there's some value for it or some demand for it, and it might be valuable. So what I've done is I've recorded a screen share in two 30-minute segments I want to cut together here. And this will basically explain what I did when I started at the age of 17 and all the way through to now, where I've built another 7-figure business that helps marketing agencies get customers and have more fun. I've learned a lot along the way, and the main point of today's video is to tell you that talent doesn't really exist. A lot of people will tell you their story, and a lot of gurus and coaches will talk to you about their history and their past, and they'll leave out a lot of details and they'll keep things very vague. And what that does is it makes you think they're a god, and it makes you believe that they have these godlike talents and tendencies that make them far more successful than the average person. And that's partly why people buy into courses and 997 courses, is because someone has this verbatim lie of their existence and they keep it real brief. And obviously I've scaled agencies to 350 people, but I'm talking about actually when you ask someone how they've done what they've done, and they just say, oh yeah, I'm born with it, or it's just talent, or I've always been able to do this. And that's a lie. And I've not always been able to do this. People can sometimes get impressed that I can sit down and record videos like this hours on end without making mistakes, and they might be impressed that I can sell it a 50% conversion rate on high ticket products. Or some people are like, oh my god, how did you come up with this loom system, or how did you build this or this? It's not talent, it's not an innate ability. It's just lots and lots and lots of work. The only talent you want to have is the ability to work really hard, and everything else will come. And that's really what I've learned. And so I'm struggling recording this video because the reason I'm struggling, to be transparent with you, is because I have a tendency to judge people who are overly narcissistic and egotistical on social media platforms, and who boast about their success and constantly talk about themselves. And they think they're the dog's bollocks, as we'd say here in the UK, and they just believe they're amazing. And I have this tendency, and it's interesting, I'm exploring it with a therapist, because now when I come to talk about myself and my experiences and my past, I'm afraid people are going to judge me because I judge other people. So it's really an outward reflection, it's a mirror. But this isn't about my underlying psychological judgment issues. I'm exploring that, but I just wanted you to know that if at any point I seem uncomfortable, I get, through the video, I get quite emotional talking about it. So it's quite a vulnerable video to record. I have put it off for a long time, but finally it's here, and I hope it's useful for you. So yeah, that's just me being transparent and honest. And really the rest of this video is dedicated to full transparency and honesty on what I've learned and basically what it takes to build an agency to 7 figures and then another business to 7 figures as well. And I hope you find it useful. So I'm going to cut the clip in now and I'll see you in there. All right, so here we are. This is the highly requested life of Charlie Morgan, right? I promise it's probably not as exciting as you might think. So I'm 23 right now, and I really started my entrepreneurial journey when I was 17. I wouldn't really say that like I started, but I knew. Do you know what, actually my earliest memory of this? I really think it really started when I was 15. Because I remember very explicitly, and this is going to be a bit of I haven't really got a plan for this video, I'm just going to sort of talk, and it could be 20 minutes, it might be an hour long, I have no idea. But I started really when I was 15. At this age, maybe 15, maybe 16, I really knew that I didn't want to be normal. And this sort of knowledge was manifesting its way in a fear. And this was basically fear of being average. The fear of being average was the first sign that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know that entrepreneurship was the vehicle, but my biggest fear was basically like this is supposed to be a house. Oh my God. But my biggest fear was just like a semi-detached house in the middle of suburbs with a small family and lasagna for tea, right? That was my biggest fear, with a job that I don't like and a 9 to 5, basically trapped, right? That was like I was terrified. I was more scared of that than I was of dying, right? And I remember this from a very early age. As soon as I started to become aware of like the future, as you do when you're starting to sort of get to 15 or 16, people start asking the question like, what do you want to do with your life? I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no idea that I wanted to run an agency or go into consulting. But what I knew is what I didn't want, and I didn't want to be average. I didn't want to be normal. I didn't want to be someone who, you graduate from college, you go to university, you get a degree, you get a job that you hate that has no relationship to your degree at all, and then you work from 9 till 5 for the rest of your life. You have a mortgage and then some financial stress, but it's okay. There's no real challenge in your life. But then obviously you have children, and then don't get me wrong, I want kids, I want a house, but I just didn't want to do that. I knew that was my biggest fear. And one of my earliest memories, this really was I think the conversation that sort of made me recognize that business, or at least something to do with business, was the right thing, was I was talking to a friend, and we were walking this is on college lunch, so I was probably about 16 in first year of college at this point. Yeah, 16 would be right. And I was talking, what am I writing here? I was talking to a friend, and we were on our way to McDonald's. And what we would do every Friday afternoon at college is my friend and I, we'd walk to McDonald's. And, from the college, it was like a 20-minute walk. And I remember this really explicitly, because this is the earliest thing I can remember from when I think about wanting to start a business. And I was talking to my friend, and we were talking about the future, because we were like, okay, we're in college now, we're big boys, what do we want to do? And he was like, oh yeah, well, I think I'm just going to go and, finish my A-levels, go to uni, and then I'll probably just get a job. And I'd had this same pathway had been described to me before by another friend when I was much younger, probably about 12. And I remember that as well. And I said to him, I was like, mate, don't you think that there's more to life than just this standard path? And he just said, no, I think that's pretty much how everyone does it. And so I'm just going to do what that does, because I know it's safe and it's what everybody else has done. And that's when that conversation shook me up, because I didn't really ever want this, but I didn't know to fear it, because I didn't know that's what everybody else wanted. I thought everybody else was thinking like me, and they were afraid of this. And so when it became apparent to me that everybody wanted this, or well, they thought they did, but that was what they thought was the right thing to do, which, by the way, I have no problem with at all, in any way, shape or form. Lots of people are happy doing that, and I have nothing to judge them for. I think they do them, it's absolutely fine. But I was like, shit, so that's not, it's not normal to not want that. And so at that point, I started to question reality, and I was like, what the hell? 16-year-old Charlie was like, what the fuck? And so I sat in this pain and this questioning after this conversation, which I remember really explicitly. I sat in this pain for about a year, because when I was doing my A-levels here in the UK, which is basically the sort of after high school equivalent, but not college, if that makes sense. After doing my A-levels, I did psychology, I did biology, and I did English. Now, what I found is wasn't really interested in English. Biology was okay, but I wasn't really interested. But psychology, my God, I was interested in psychology. I really enjoyed this subject, and I thought it was really awesome. And really, I've been reading and researching psychology from the age of 16 to 23 like an absolute machine, like I haven't really stopped. But what you'll notice here is I didn't study business. Business it wasn't even on the map, you know, on my mind. I didn't really know that you could run a business. I thought that business was like, you know, for Dragon's Den, and you had to raise loads of money and have a great idea. And I was like, oh, I could never do that. And so I did these things, and you know, what started to happen is when I got to my second year of college. So at this point, I'm going to actually draw this timeline like a little bit further out here, because I really want to try and articulate this in a coherent way. So, you know, at 16, this is the big moment, which is when I have this conversation with my friend at McDonald's, and I'm like, what the fuck? Right? And then I get to 17, and I'm doing psychology, I'm doing biology, and I'm doing English, right? And I like psychology, I don't really like the other two subjects. But then what I realised is one day, right, lo and behold, 17-year-old Charlie Morgan comes across a Ty Lopez ad. Right? We've all been there. And I remember Ty Lopez was like showing me around this massive house that he had. And I remember the ad explicitly. It was a house tour ad. It wasn't the here in my garage ad. It was a house tour ad, and this is supposed to be a big house, by the way. Right? It's insulting to him. But what this did is this raised my questioning even more. Because I looked at this, and I looked at this house, and I was like, how the hell does someone have a house like that? That was the antithesis of my core central fear that was driving me away from the norm and the average. And so this ad resonated with me more than anything, and it sparked a really curious interest. And then from there, I looked into Ty Lopez, and I realized that he was an entrepreneur, right? And so, you know, for a long time, I considered buying his 67 steps, right? You know, that course that you probably saw about 5 years ago, the 67 steps. If you can't remember it, then don't worry. But this was a course, and it was $67. And, you know, at this point, obviously I'm 17, $67 is a lot of money. And I was like freaking out. So what I realized is that Ty Lopez was like, okay, knowledge is the secret and the key. And so at this point, this is when I really started like reading, right? So this is when I went to Ty Lopez's, in fact, I wonder if he's still got it actually. Ty Lopez recommended books. And really this is just an Amazon affiliate play, but yeah, it's still here, right? So I went through this, all of this, and I basically read every single book here. In fact, I have every single one of these books, and I've read them a lot of times, especially this one here. This one was a difficult one to buy, Poor Charlie's Almanac, because it's like $100, but it's one of the best books I've ever bought. And so this is where I started reading a lot. And then what I started to do is on here, I'm pretty sure there are 3 books. There's Sam Walton, Made in America, Jeff Bezos, The Everything Store, and Elon Musk's autobiography. So let's see if I can... I also read this one, When I'm Talking, You Know I'm Dead. That was good. Sam Walton, Made in America. And Ray Kroc's biography. That was really good. And I'm pretty sure on here there's Elon Musk's autobiography and some other ones on here. So like at this point, I was like, okay, cool. I'm reading and this is good. And then I finally sort of bit the bullet to buy the 67 steps. I bought it and like I learned some stuff. It wasn't amazing, but it got me like really hungry for psychology and knowledge and stuff. And so at this point, I'm 17. I don't really know anything about business, but I've read at this point, like between 17 and 18, I probably read about 40 books maybe. And like, you know, I'd taken this course. And so what Ty Lopez also had at this age was the SMMA course, which was like $997, right? And so at age of 18, what I did is I actually bought the 997 marketing agency course. And it kind of sucked. I didn't really learn anything. And this is where I got burned by my first 997 course, which is why I really hate them. So fast forward, let's sort of wipe this all away here. And that's the sort of backstory. Okay? Because at this point I'm, 18 years old and I've got a big decision to make, and I'm going to walk you through what that decision was now. So this is Charlie Morgan, right? And my hairline was not that weak, I promise. This is Charlie Morgan at the age of 18, right? And I got cool hair. So the problem here is I am now stuck between a fork of decisions. I either go to university or I don't, right? Now, the problem with this is that, like, if like I had this 997 marketing agency course and I knew that like I could start this business, but I tried and I failed. And this was when I came up with my first marketing agency logo, which the first agency that I ever created, which wasn't an agency because it was just a brand, like I had nothing behind it, was called Key Social. And this is the first, look at it, I'm not the best in the terms of graphic designing, but this is abysmal, mate. You would have, Van Gogh would be quaking in his boots if he saw this one. But this was the first agency I came up with. So it was called Key Social. And, you know, at this point, I had Key Social. And over here, I'd actually signed a client for this agency. I had £100, right? My first client was a double glazing window installation business. And they paid me to do lead generation through Facebook groups. So I went to these, like, they're based down in Cornwall in the southwest, and I joined all these southwest Cornish Facebook groups, and I promoted these. I had a really clever way of getting leads, actually. I came up with this strategy where, like, I would pretend to be a customer of the double glazing business and say, oh my God, guys, I had these steamed up misty windows in my bathroom and someone managed to come and fix them for me. I've been looking for a fix for ages and it only cost me £100 or whatever. And then, like, I would get loads of DMs, like, from people in the group saying, oh, I've got this problem, what's the company? And then I would say, oh yeah, it's these people, do you want me to send you their number? And then I'd get paid, like, to do that, right? And, like, to be fair, this double glazing company probably made like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands from that, but they paid me £100. And honestly, this was like the biggest moment of my fucking life, because from the age of really 15 up until 18, I'd wanted to make my own money and create my own wealth. And at this point, I made £100, and I will never ever forget this screenshot, because what I've been doing ever since I was 18 is I've been taking pictures of myself and my journey, as you'll see here. I'm going to go through some of them in a bit, and what you'll notice is, like, I had all these little screenshots, and I knew this would happen. I knew I'd come to the point at which I needed to record a video like this in 5 to 10 years, whatever it was. And so I had this screenshot. So that was my first client, but it wasn't really enough. I couldn't go to my parents or my teachers and say, oh yeah, like, I've made £100. I'm not going to go to uni. So unfortunately, I made the decision to go to uni. And long story short is I studied entrepreneurship. It was fucking shit, and it was one of the biggest mistakes I've made. However, it wasn't a mistake because obviously it's unfolded into my future now. So when I was doing entrepreneurship, I was doing two things. I was studying, and I was also doing my agency. Now at this point, my agency, I had a couple more clients. I didn't have a niche, but I got a web designing contract for £500 for a charity. And a management fee for like £80 a month to manage their website, which was awesome. And I got some graphic design work, which I had no idea what to do, so I outsourced it to my sister. And I started getting some more like social media posting clients. And at this point, when I was at uni, I was probably making like, you know, £1,000 a month, which ain't bad at all. But I remember I wanted to scale my agency at this point. And I was like, oh, I'm all about scaling, right? And it was stupid. And so, like, what I started to do is I started to try and find clients. And so what I did was I was at uni in a city called Plymouth, in the UK, and what I would do is this was my university halls building in first year. It was quite a nice building, actually. We were sort of right up in the top here. It was really beautiful. And so what I would do is I would leave my halls in the day on days I wasn't like studying, and I would do two things. So if I wasn't at uni, and anyone who's been to university will know that the first year of university is fucking easy. It's a breeze if you're not doing like medicine, because you have like 5 hours of lectures a week, and then the rest of it you don't have to do anything. And so I knew that like my time was valuable, and so I did two things. So if I wasn't studying for my course, then what I would do is I would go to the library and I would take a huge bag of books. In fact, you know what? I still have this bag to this day. I fill this bag up, this like Nike sports bag, with books that I bought, that I'd used. You know, I used my agency money to buy books basically, and I would go to the library, and I'm not even joking, I would read for about 10 hours a day. You can ask any of my friends who were like at uni with me. They were like, "Oh, Charlie, do you want to come out tonight?" I was like, "No, I'm going to the library to read." And so I'd take my bag of books, and it was fucking heavy, and I'd go, and I can't remember what was the library called. It was like the Charles Library, Plymouth. Yeah, that was the Charles Seal Hayne Library in Plymouth, which is the university library. And I would sit in there and it looked like this. And on the inside, I remember it very, very clearly. And let's see if I can actually find where I sat. I mean, it's obviously quite a big one, but I had a very specific seat where I sat sort of like up in the up on the second floor. So like you go in here and then let me see if I can no, I definitely won't be able to find where I was sitting. But anyway, basically you get the point, right? So this is weirdly nostalgic for me because I haven't really discussed any of this stuff. So like there was two things. So I'd either do this, I'd read for like 10 hours a day. Like if I didn't have lectures, I'd just go and sit in the library and read and read and read and read. And like I was really getting through like, at this point, like a book a day sometimes, depending on how focused I was and what I was reading. And so I would read anything from Accounting for Dummies to Robert Greene psychology books to systems theory to environmental stuff. Like I'll just anything I get my hands on, I just lap it up and lap it up and lap it up. But the other thing I did is that if I wasn't at university doing my course, I would try and find mentors. And so what I would do is I'd go to networking events, and I found three mentors. One was a guy called Neil, one was a guy called Russell, another was a guy called Andrew. Russell has had more of an impact on me than I could possibly even state. Russell was a guy who ran he still runs a insolvency consultancy practice in the Southwest. And it's like a multi-million-pound business. It's a consultancy business. And Russell was like my fucking superhero, man. I remember we used to go, like I'd be like, hey, can I take you for coffee? I met him at a networking event and he told me he did consulting and he had this gold watch and I was like, oh my God, I need to know this bloke. And I'd ask him all these questions and we'd go for coffee and I'd take him to Costa or we'd go for lunch and I just sit there and I would just ask him like hundreds of questions. In fact, I'm surprised he even put up with me. I still actually talk to him to this day. In fact, I've got him on my phone here. And if, I still sometimes call him if I've got like a business issue and he'll help me out. But really, like you'll see the theme here was basically just learning, right? At this point, like the main priority for me at this point was just an insatiable desire to learn. Like whether I was at the library or whether I was going to mentors and asking them loads of questions, I'd do that. Now, the other guy that was really helpful for me was a guy called Andrew. And Andrew, because at this point, like I had my agency and I thought I was the dog's bollocks, right? Freelancing, making some money. Obviously, when you're at uni, £1,000 a month is a fair bit. But Andrew, he introduced me to a guy, what was his name? Neil, was it Neil? I think it was Neil. No, Mike. I remember this guy. So this is an interesting story. And this is where I almost quit. I'm glad I didn't. So Andrew introduced me to a guy called Mike who ran a social media marketing agency in the Southwest. And Mike was doing quite well with the social media marketing agency. I don't know his numbers, but I know he had quite a big team. And so Andrew said, hey, I know you run this agency and obviously you told me you want to scale it. And so let me introduce you to Mike. He might be able to help you. And so I remember this explicitly. So one day, I went from, in Plymouth, I went from the city centre and I walked all the way, I don't know if it was Derriford, there's a place in the city, but I basically walked for about an hour. And it was chucking it down with rain and it was pouring it down and it was freezing. And I remember I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to go walk to Mike. And on the way to Mike, I picked up 2 coffees because I thought he might want a coffee. And I didn't really drink coffee, but I picked these coffees up and whatever. And then what happened is like I got to this thing and there was nobody at the office. And so I was stood outside basically in the rain for like half an hour. And then someone turned up and then Mike was there and he turned up in his car and he was like, oh, hi, I didn't realize you were coming. I forgot. Let's go inside. And then it turns out he didn't actually want the coffee. And I'd spilled pretty much all of one of them anyway on the way because I tripped over and none of it went on my shirt, fortunately enough. Otherwise I would have probably turned around. So I sat there and drank a coffee. Now, the problem with this is that what happened when I got in is Mike laid into me. Right, not physically, right? But I told Mike about my situation. I said I had this little agency and I wanted to grow it. And Mike was just really horrible, basically. He was like, you shouldn't bother trying. This is a really bad game. You've got to have years of experience. I've been doing this for 30 years and there's no point in you even trying to grow this business because, you're too young. You've got to get experience. You've got to graduate. And he just laid into me, right? And this was really, really discouraging and horrible because he just basically told me to quit. And he said, look, Charlie, this business isn't for you. Like, I can tell like you don't have any experience with this. You're taking on graphic design projects and website projects, and you know, like that website project that you've taken on that you just told me about that pays you £500, like you're not a professional, you can't manage that. Like how are you going to manage their expectations? And you know, you need to get a professional to do it. And this is the kind of stuff that we would do. And it didn't occur to me at the time that he was just manipulating me to try and funnel work to him. And so I was like here for like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And I was like, mate, I brought you a fucking coffee. I stood in the rain for an hour and a half and you just told me to quit and basically told me exactly what I didn't want to hear. Now, fortunately enough, I left this and I walked all the way back for an hour in the rain again. And at this point, my coat was just like sodden through. So I walked to the back and I was like, at this point, I was like fucking miserable, right? I was like, oh my God. And do you know what? There was a person, one of my best friends, who's still one of my closest friends. He was back at my university halls because he knew where I'd gone for the day. I was walked back to my halls here in first year. And my friend George is the reason I'm still in business. So I went back after the mic and I went to George and I said, George, like I'm fucked, mate. Like this guy's just completely laid into me. And I had this massive authority bias, right? Where I was like, yeah, so he's just told me to quit. I'm not good enough and blah, 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 blah. And it was a nightmare. And so like what happened is George said, well, why do you think he's told you these things? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And George was like, well, he runs a marketing agency in the Southwest, right? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, where are your clients? I was like, well, they're all local in the Southwest. And he was like, right, you get it? And I was like, oh shit. Because what I realized is that Mike realized he saw an opportunity to shut down like a direct competitor, someone who was budding and who maybe, I don't know if he was threatened by me or not, I have no idea. But like George was like, dude, like this guy has just like told you to quit and told you to stop doing everything and start sending him your business, because he actually told me to start like passing accounts off to him because I wasn't going to do them properly. And it was fucking horrible. And like, you know, at the time I felt so emotional about it. And then I realized afterwards, I was like, I got to fucking slay this dude. I got to put him to sleep. I got to send him to the business graveyard, so to speak. And so George is the reason that I'm still in business. And George, if you're watching this, I love you, mate. Because we had this conversation and he just brought me back to that reality. And really what that did is it just made me that was one of my first most important lessons in business, is like just trust. Do not trust people who you don't know. And people like Mike. And Mike, I strongly doubt you're watching this, mate, but if you are, fuck you. So that was basically one side story. And so what happened after this is my confidence was knocked a little bit, but I continued sort of going and growing this thing. And like what happened after a while is like, I stayed at this £1,000 a month mark for ages. I didn't really have any progress. I didn't know how to do outreach. I was relying on referrals, but these clients weren't referring me business. And what happened after a while is like the momentum that I built up initially with these relationships, it just started to sort of taper off. My studies increased and like it got bad. Then what happened is I basically looked at this uni thing and I was like, fuck that, I hate this, it's boring. And like I remember dropping out of university as like a real sort of big thing. I thought it was terrifying. Everybody thought I was really brave, but I just saw it as like the most obvious thing to do. Because like I went to one of my tutors, a guy called Raphael. And I said to Raphael, I said, hey mate, when do we learn to sell? Because Russell, my mentor, who was making, bear in mind, like millions and millions per year, Russell said, Charlie, the most important skill you can have in business is to learn how to sell. And I said, okay, I believe you, Russell. You're a multi-millionaire and you've got this awesome Jaguar that you drive around in. I think you're fucking awesome. And I went to Raphael, my tutor at university, and he basically said, Charlie, we don't teach people how to sell in this course. And I said, well, why not? He said, well, it's really because the people who teach the course don't actually run a business and haven't got any sales experience. It's more about the theory, more about the theory of running a business. And I had that conversation with Raphael, and I dropped out the next day. 24 hours after, I was gone. I said, Raphael, mate, I can't do this. Like, this is a joke. The course was a fucking meme, right? And it really wasn't. It really wasn't what I wanted. And so that was Charlie at 18. You know, I really sort of at this point, like, you know, I'd become this freelancer making £700, £800, £900 a month. But what happened after this point is I dropped out of uni and my agency just sort of plummeted as well. And I became really lost. And this was probably around the age of like 18 to 19, and I really was just like in a bad place basically. I was really unhappy. Obviously I dropped out of uni, so my parents weren't best pleased. And like this, I just sort of, you know, fell off a bit, and my confidence was knocked. And like my agency, I still had a couple of clients, but I was making maybe like £200 a month. And the problem here is I've been running the agency for probably about 6 to 8 months at this point. And so like, I was like, oh, if I'm only making 200 quid a month after this, I can't make a good go of it. And so what I thought I had to do was find a mentor who was running an agency who I could actually work for, who wasn't like Mike. And so what I did at the age of really like 18 again, just after I dropped out, because like, bear in mind I dropped out within like a couple of months of being at uni. It was really like 6 months. Between the age of 18 and 19, I did an apprenticeship. And so this is me in an apprenticeship. Right? Don't know if you can really see that. But this is me here. And on the left here is my boss, who I was learning from. And this is a guy called Alan. Alan, he's an absolute legend, mate. Like, I owe so much to Alan. An unbelievable amount. But Alan was my mentor, and like he taught me so much about running a marketing agency, but most importantly he taught me how to sell. So my job at this apprenticeship at this marketing agency in the southwest was cold calling, right? And this was fucking brutal. This was where the boy became a man, so to speak. And so my job at this apprenticeship was to basically call 200 businesses per day. Now, Alan dropped me in at the deep end. I had no previous cold calling experience. I had no previous sales experience except from the odd agency work I had. And like, I remember just driving to work and actually like, and I'm not even joking, this is not even a joke. I contemplated like lightly crashing my car on days, or like forcing my car to break down so I didn't have to go into work to make cold calls. And I remember every day, it was about a 25-minute commute. I was still living with my parents, and I was driving to work and often I'd look at a bush and be like, I could just plow my car into that bush. And that was how painful I found this thing. But I stuck at it. For some reason, for some very strange psychotic reason, I didn't give up. And I continued, and I did this apprenticeship for a whole year. Every single day, getting into work, making 200 cold calls to businesses who didn't really want to hear from me, selling social media management services, like slightly lower ticket services. And I really got about like halfway through this apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship was supposed to be 18 months. I completed it in 12 months and 1 day. Because you were supposed to take at least 12 months and a day to complete it, but the average person took 18 to 24 months. I got all the content completed in 6 months, and then I had to wait like another 6 months to finish it, because you have to do on the job. It's called on the job training as an apprentice, and you have to sort of like finish the work at the company. And so I was sort of just twiddling my thumbs for 6 months, because at the end of each apprenticeship day, I had an hour where I could do training, right, as an apprenticeship. And you could train how you wanted to train, but you really had to dedicate your training to learning the content of the apprenticeship. And my apprenticeship was in sales and marketing, so I had to go through this content. But I blitzed through the content in 6 months because I wanted to spend the extra hour at the end of the day learning how to actually build a marketing agency. And so what I basically did, really for the last 6 months of this apprenticeship, for the last hour of every day, is I would do courses. So I had some courses and a bunch of like mindset courses and business courses. And at this point, this is me here, right? So this is me, and this is me at my apprenticeship. So as you'll notice, I kept taking these photos because I knew that one day I'd record this video. And so my apprenticeship, like what I would do is my routine, because I wanted to build an agency, still wanted to build an agency, but I also needed to get the apprenticeship to get the experience. And so this was my routine. I would wake up at 5 a.m. At 6 a.m., really well. At 5 a.m. I'd go to the gym. And then at 6 a.m. I'd be home. And then at 6:30 a.m., right, I would be at my office, right? And basically from 6:30 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. I would work on my business. So I spent the first 3 hours before I started my actual job working. And this could be doing emails, it could be doing outreach, it could be doing cold calls if I was calling to like Australia. I remember I used to call Australia at 6:30 because obviously that was when they were awake, and in the evening. And so I'd at this point I knew I wanted to do gyms, so I'd cold call Australian gyms and be like, hey, I'm from the UK, I'm calling you really early because I love your business, and that got me some meetings. And then, you know, I'd set meetings, and sometimes I'd literally, like, I'd sit in my car, like I'd turn up to the office like 3 hours early, and I'd sit in my car and I would work on my MacBook here and just come up with stuff. And then I'd start work at 9:30 and I'd work through to 1 o'clock. And then on my lunch from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, once again, I would work. This was my prime cold calling time. I had an hour to make cold calls. So whilst I was finishing up my afternoon at 12:30, I would always eat my lunch, like just before actually finishing the afternoon, the morning. And then I'd just run straight to my car. I'd drive like 5 minutes down the road, down to this little lane that I used to park up at, this little lay-by here. And I remember it really explicitly, and I would just call. And I was fucking hungry, man. I wanted to, not hungry physically, like I'd just eaten, right? But I really wanted it to work, and so I just make cold calls. So like my day was painful enough because I was making 200 calls, like 100 calls in the morning here, and then I'd come into the afternoon and make another 100 calls. And then I'd finish this job at 1700 at 5 p.m. I'd drive home for 17:30, and from 17:30 until really about 21:30, once again I would just work. I'd make more calls, do more outreach, do more sales calls, do more client delivery, and then I'd go to bed at usually about 10 p.m. and I would repeat. This was my routine for 6 months. It was horrible. It was pure agonizing pain, and it was necessary. But what happened here is that I'm doing this routine. What happened after 12 months of starting the apprenticeship is I had obviously I had the apprenticeship, which meant that I was qualified and whatever the fuck that means. But the main thing is I had about 6k a month in pounds, right? And really, actually, it was a tiny bit. It was probably like 7k a month. But at this point, I was basically making like a 10k a month income. Not quite, but like I was at 6 figures. So I was making $8,000 per month. And if you're wondering how I got to $8,000 per month, it was just this. It was 3 hours of cold calling before my workday started, an hour of cold calling on my lunch break, and 3 hours of cold calling after my work had finished before I went to bed. And I'm not joking. I think I probably made about, for my business and this business collectively, probably about 300, 400 cold calls per day, every day for 6 months. And this was where I learned my verbal fluency. So people ask me on YouTube all the time, like, Charlie, how do you talk so well? Or how can you just sit and talk about a video for like half an hour, like without making any mistakes? And it's just this. I did so many fucking calls, so many sales calls, so many cold calls. And the result of this was over the course of like the 6 months is I basically managed to acquire 6 gyms on like $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month retainers. And what I'm going to have to do now is sort of cut this clip, and I've got a call starting now, ironically. I'm 2 minutes late for it, but I'm going to continue this story and we'll cut back in and I'll see you in a second. Right, I'm back. So that's basically the start of the story, really. And that was really like, this is the main thing. Is, you know, I was able to basically go, I'd started between 17 and sort of 18. I had this little freelance, you know, entrepreneurial thingy. And then what happened is I did an apprenticeship, and then obviously like I'm working I literally, and this isn't even an exaggeration, I would get up at 5 and I would go to the gym, and then from 6:30 until really like 9:30 I would just work. And that was honestly like, that was what I did. And this is where I learned a lot about myself. In fact, now that I actually get quite emotional talking about it, to be honest, because like, you know, I remember like, I remember being like in that fucking car, just in pain, because I was thinking about this job, and excuse me. And I was doing this apprenticeship and I hated it. I didn't hate the apprenticeship, but I enjoyed it. My boss was great, but I knew this was the route to the 9 to 5. Everybody else in the office was working 9 to 5, and like I was motivated by the fear of being average. And I just, this is where I grew, and this is where I went from being like normal civilian to actually like making 6 figures. And I remember the first like month I made, like I signed my first ever client in the gym space was a guy called Ian, and he actually came. Here's another picture of me. So this is me. This is when I first started making cold calls about 4 or 5 months into my apprenticeship. And this was on, I also did this, by the way, on Saturdays and Sundays. So this is me. This is like a Saturday, and I wasn't at work. Instead, I was outside in the winter, in my sister's art shed. You can see there's PVA glue in the back here and some like paper that she used to draw on and stuff. And this is my laptop. I had Skype on here and my notepad, and I was leaning on some weird chopping board that we used to have. And this is me with like 3 jumpers on, and I'm making cold calls on a Saturday morning for probably about 6 hours, and I'm smiling. Like, I was in some pain, but I knew that like if I just did this and I just relentlessly pursued it, then I'd win. And I didn't have a client at this point, but I was still smiling because I was actually quite enjoying the grind. And like, you know, it was really just horrible, but at the same time, I was like, I got my dad to take this picture of me. As I remember, I was outside in this shed, and I walked in. I remember my hands would get freezing, and I had this little heater in there that didn't really work, and the electricity would randomly cut out. But I stayed at it, and I just stuck at it, and I got on my computer and I just called gyms, just as many as I could, and I'd call them up and I'd say, "Hey, I'm Charlie. I'm starting." And they'd hang up, and I just call them and say, "Hey, I'm Charlie. I'm," you know. And I realized I learned a lot about cold calling in this point, and most importantly, I learned a lot about sales and how to convince people to do things. But yeah, this was me. And I look back at this picture, and honestly, like sometimes when I look back at this picture, it almost makes me want to cry, because this guy, I don't recognize him in any way, shape or form. I do, but I'm such a different person now. And this was really an emotional time for me, because, you know, this was where I signed my first client. Guy was called Ian, and he started paying me £1,000 a month to generate leads for him. And I remember I launched his campaigns, and I went for a walk with my sister to a place called Golden Cap. This was a bit of a moment, which is a hill in, I think, Dorset in like England, south of England. And I went up this for a walk up to this place called Golden Cap. It's in the south of the UK in Dorset. And I was walking up here, and when I got like up to the top here, this is where I got a notification on my phone from an app called Lead Owl that I generated my first ever lead for this client using Facebook ads. And I broke down and I cried. And my sister was like, "What the fuck? What's wrong with you? What, are you okay?" And I was up there, and I was looking out on all these beautiful views, and it was really lovely, and it was quite cold because it was the winter, but it was one of those nice sunny days. And that's where I got my first lead for my first client, and that point onwards, really the rest has been history from there. And so that was it. That was, if people are wondering, like, Charlie, how did you scale to 6 figures a month in a month? That's what we're at now. Bloody hell. 6 figures a year in your first real year of starting your agency. Really, I did it in 6 months. And the way I did it was just through an unhealthy amount of work. All my clients came through cold calls. And then after a while, I started posting results, and then I got a couple of extra clients through my results. So that was that. My second client was a guy called Neil, who ran a gym in Blackpool in England. And I generated him in his first month like 400 leads, and he was crazy happy, but we had to stop because I gave him too many leads. And then I had a guy called Robin who ran a gym, a franchise in Colchester in Essex. And my next client was a guy called Callum, who ran a boot camp in a little village outside of London. And that was it. And people just started paying me £1,000 a month. And, you know, I then started to, you know, I had 3 clients, and then Robin, the guy from the franchise, had another franchise, and I came on board with that. And then Callum introduced me to another guy. And really, I basically went from 0 to about $8,000 per month in 6 months. And I made this transition, this transformation, really by working, and I'm not even lying, like 80 hours a week. And this is actual focused work, making cold calls. It was horrible. So I'm now at the point where I'm at this point. So I finished my apprenticeship, and what I started doing is I then get an office. So this is me in my office, or that, it wouldn't really call it an office. You can see here. It's a bit blurry. I look like I'm about to kill someone. But this was my office, and I'd work in here. It was just like a shoebox in a little village 10 minutes away from where my parents was. And you know, at this point, I'm making 6 figures. I've got this office, and things are good. You know, I'm making 100k a year in the business, and I really from this point I just started to scale. This point I start hiring virtual assistants to do cold calls for me. At this point I've got a proven system for cold calling that I leverage. I start doing some other outreach and get more appointments, and I've got this inclination for sales, and I can start signing clients. The problem then becomes service delivery, and I start struggling with scaling service delivery. Now, insert bow. So I get to probably about 19 and a half. And 19 and a half is when I meet this man here, right? My current business partner, Bo. And Bo, if you're watching this, mate, I love you to pieces. Bo is honestly, there's a lot of people that I'm grateful for in my life, and there's a lot of people that mean the world to me. But Bo is by far one of the most influential and important people that I've ever met in my entire life. Like my business career or my business life, I can sort of define two very clear moments. The first one was, well, really there's three. The first important moment, there's a few. Okay, let me go through this. So the first important moment is when I have that question with my friend walking to McDonald's, and I think, okay, I want a business. The second is the Ty Lopez ad, right? The third is that conversation with Mike at uni and all that reading. And then the fourth is obviously when I learn all of this 80-hour-a-week business in my apprenticeship. And then the fifth, and by far the most important, is meeting Bo. Bo he's had more of an influence on me than really. I mean, obviously up until this point, I needed all of these steps to get to this point. But without Bo, I'd be fucked. Well, not fucked. I'd just probably still be stuck where I am. And I attribute pretty much everything to this bloke, and he's awesome. And I'm sure he'd say similar things about me because we complement each other so well in terms of skill set. And so at this point, I'm 19 and a half, and my biggest issue is service delivery. Because at this point, I've got 10 clients. I'm making $15,000 per month or pounds per month. I've been scaling, and I run into this sort of bottleneck here, where I can't seem to scale because my operations are weak and I'm doing all the ads, and every time I try and outsource the ads, things drop off. Now this is where Bo comes in, because at this point, Bo has his own journey of building his own marketing agency. It's called NorthFlow Consulting, and it's obviously what I'm a partner of now, and I've helped him build that. And so this is where Bo comes in. Because Bo, we introduced so I met Bo through Facebook. So we became friends on Facebook. I didn't know who he was, and then one day I get a DM on Facebook, and it's a message from Bo, and he says, "Hey, do you want to buy some funnels?" Right? Because I was like, oh, this is interesting. And one of these funnels was a gym funnel, right? And I was working with gyms, and I had this service delivery problem. So I'm pretty sure I paid Bo $97 for these funnels, and I signed up to ClickFunnels through his affiliate link, because I think to access these funnels, I had to go through his link or something, and the client funnels I had were in this weird software. So this was an introduction to ClickFunnels, and obviously, to this day, I've realised I'm still on Bo's ClickFunnels. So Bo, if you're watching this, you cheeky bugger, he still gets affiliate money from my ClickFunnels account, which I'm actually pretty sure comes from our joint business account now. So joke's on you, Bo. But so at this point, Bo sells me some funnels, and I buy them and I implement them for gyms, and things go quite well. And at this point, I'm also in this this WhatsApp group. And I asked Bo, hey man, do you want to join this WhatsApp group? There's some agency owners in there, and we just hang out. And so Bo joined this WhatsApp group. Now Bo, at this point, is a little further ahead than me. Bo's doing about 30k to 40k per month with his agency. Now here's where things get really interesting, because this is me, right? This is me, and this is Bo. So Bo, my bottleneck, right, is service delivery. Bo's bottleneck is sales. This is interesting. I hated service delivery. Bo hated sales. However, I love sales, and Bo loves service delivery. So I love sales. Bo loves service delivery. Bo hates sales. I hate service delivery. No, it's the wrong way around. You get the point. Bo loves service delivery. He hates sales. I love sales. I hate service delivery. And so at this point, we get on a call, and we realise that we're both in the same niche. We've both scaled to multi-six figures, and I have this weird strength of being really good at sales and having this ridiculous conversion rate, and Bo has this weird strength of keeping clients for basically forever. And I scaled aggressively through poor service delivery but incredible sales and a revolving door, and Bo scaled passively through incredible service delivery but basically no sales. And he was winning, but he started before me. this is where we start talking for like really about 4 months before deciding one of the best decisions that I've personally ever made, and I think Bo may have ever made as well. And this is where we decide to start partnering up. So at this point, what happens is we decide to trade under NorthFlow, because that's obviously the stronger brand, and like it's with the better, my business didn't have the best reputation for service delivery because I wasn't very good at it. And so what happens at this point is I start doing sales for NorthFlow. So I do sales for NorthFlow probably for about 2 to 3 months. And what happens at this point is I start converting it like 60% on this done for you thing that we're selling for like $2,000 a month. And so what happens now is, like, before this was the bottleneck for Bo, and we started to build these appointment booking systems as well. And by the way, at this point I'm probably about in 21 maybe. And at this point NorthFlow is doing about 40k to about 40k a month, because that's when Bo first took me on. What happens, but over the course of about a 3 to 4 month period at this point, is we go from like 30 clients to like 60 clients. And we basically go from like 40k a month all the way to like 80k a month. Right? Oh, I've got this fucking dust in my nose. Sorry. So we go from 40k a month to 80k a month. And this is where we get to, and this is where like our most clients we've ever had is like 64 done for you clients, paying us anywhere between like 1 to 2k a month. But we cut some fat, and sometimes we go above this, we'd sometimes go to like 100k a month. It depended on like the month and what, like we had some paper appointment deals, but really we'd hover between like 90 to 100k a month, but the most we ever had a 64. And sometimes we'd have like loads more. So at this point, we were exhausted. So this is me, right? This is Bo, and like I tell you what, like I'm doing all these calls, and Bo's doing all these service delivery things and managing a team, and we just burned ourselves like to the ground. Like we burned ourselves out like many times over. And you know, we're both like, Bo at this point is 19, I'm 21. Bo, by the way, had scaled to like 6 figures by the time he was like 17. He's a fucking beast. And by this point, like we're really just burned out. Like, you know, we're just fucked. Like, you know, we haven't got enough systems to support this, because Bo didn't anticipate my sales skills being so good. Sorry, Bo. Then we start building this system. We built this system called Loom. It's now called Loom Alchemy, but we started using this Loom system that we found. And we also have this cold messaging system that we found. And then Bo's also at this point running ads as well. And so I've got a full calendar, and we start to have a rep called Alex who comes on board, who's still with us now. And then we have to hire a manager called Dixon to take care of some stuff for us. And then like what happens is things just blow up. We start, like, we have 60 clients on board, that basically we've got 60 headaches. They're all getting results, but there's always these little things, and we can't manage it all, and things go wrong. And so what we do, really towards like the end of, where are we now? What was it, 2022? Yeah, 2022. So this was like 2021 was when we started Imperium. So really like in 2020, obviously this is when the pandemic hits, right? And so when the pandemic hits, NorthFlow takes a big hit. And so what we do at this point is we use the pandemic as time, and we use the time in the pandemic, the grace period we have after all this burnout, to build something called the Gym Growth Accelerator. And the Gym Growth Accelerator is a consulting program, a high-ticket consulting program we sell to gyms. And so what we essentially did here is we used the pandemic and the downtime as an opportunity to transition from done for you to consulting, which is a transition that every agency owner should make for the sake of their sanity, but only once they've scaled to 7 figures. There's no point in transitioning to consulting unless you've scaled to 7 figures, because you don't need to, and you want to make sure you have enough experience under your belt on a done for you basis first, because consulting and building a course is a luxury that really you have to earn, right? And if you try and do it before building a done for you business, you're fucked. So this is up until now, right? So throughout 2020, we still land the odd client in the odd gym. We're selling this thing, and we're selling it for like, 6 to 10k. And at this point, we start consulting, and I know that there's certain lockdowns in states released, and we have this thing that helps gyms get online customers as well. And so we sort of build it back up to the point where we're doing like 30, 40, 50K a month. And then we rebuild the systems once the pandemic opens, and we can start returning to that sort of 80K a month mark, which we're really happy with, selling this consulting program. What this means is we can scale because there's no service delivery, right? So we package up our service delivery. Bo recorded the Gym Growth Accelerator. It's now sold to gyms, and this is like a business now that we really can it just ticks over. We don't really have to do much. The program requires some editing from Bo here and there, but gyms really take care of all the hard work. The program rocks. We've got if we come over here and go to NorthFlow, you'll be able to find, this is the agency that, well, it's not really an agency, it's a consulting agency, right? But this is these are all the results we've got from people like, here's Donnie Day, legend.
Hey y'all, name's Donnie Day. I've been a trainer for 13 years.
So we've got all these testimonials for the program, and really this thing, we've got such good results, such good reputation in the market that we don't really need to do much on this thing anymore, which is awesome. What happened back in January of 2021 is NorthFlow is now at this point is a bit of a machine. We've got this done. We've got this consulting model. We don't really have to do much work for it to run and for us to get clients because we've got a good reputation and we have outbound systems that work so well and so efficiently. And we now are in a position where we don't really have any work to do and we're making all this money. That was good. Towards the end of 2020, we were in this point. We're both happy. We've got this lifestyle we always wanted, right? We don't have to do any work, blah, 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 blah. But what happened is pretty quickly after 2 to 3 months of not doing anything is we got really bored again and we sort of missed the grind. So what we did, if I come out here, I know this is like a super, super long video, but you guys asked for it. So here you go. So let's scribble all this out. And so what we've done after all of that and building all that, and obviously this is a simplification, it's taken us hours and hours of work, 2 people working 12 hours a day to build that out and to build all those systems. But what we've done now basically is we've now built Imperium Agency. So Imperium Agency we started in January of 2021, and this is basically a consulting business. Right, and what we do is we help marketing agencies scale, because we've basically scaled and built our own marketing agency to the point where we've transitioned into a done with you consulting style business that runs itself. And so now what we do is we help other people build and scale agencies, and we're very fucking good at it, right? We've got 160 clients. So between January 2021 and January 2022, we rolled out all of the systems that work for us for NorthFlow, and they work for gyms, and they work really well for agencies as well. And so now we've got 160 clients, and really this number will probably be closer to 400 by the end of this year, maybe even probably more than that, maybe 500. And that's really the story. And so Imperium is just fucking awesome. We love it so much. We love it way much more than NorthFlow Consulting, because we love the market and we like working with agency owners because it's who we are. With gyms, we knew we could never really win. We could never take the market by storm because we never had owned a gym. And it's difficult to really, really grow and scale a massive company and compete with people who have actually done this is the thing about the NorthFlow thing, is we'd never built and owned a gym. And so we were competing against competition and other consultants who actually had run their own gyms for decades and scaled their own gyms. And we knew we could never win in that market because you can't compete with someone who knows the market that well. So what we realized is, what have we built and what have we scaled? A marketing agency and a consulting business. So what we've done is we've obviously done that, and we know how it works, and we know the ins and outs of it, and we've got the experience, and thus Imperium Agency was born. And so what we did, and this is this is recently, so this is from a year ago, right? This is me, and this is Bo, right? I think his legs are probably a bit longer than that. But what we did is we basically built the Imperium Agency program, right? And we built this program, and it's a monster. It's 200 videos long. We've got 150 hours of content, and it's just a fucking machine, right? And we sell it to agencies, and they come in and they use it, and people love it. And people love it to the point where we started a Trustpilot a while ago. Let's see if I can actually dig this up. So this has always been a consistent theme of ours. In terms of just spending all of our time building insane products. Like, so it wasn't so much for me when I was in my early days because my service delivery sucked. But as soon as I partnered up with Bo, I learned how to actually build products and great services. And ever since he partnered up with me, he learned how to sell and do cool things. And so we complement each other really well. I can sell, he can deliver, he can retain, I can maintain. And we've got this consistent theme of building these businesses and just absolutely delighting our clients. So this is the Imperium Agency Trustpilot, which we started a few months ago. And you can scroll through here and it makes me smile. Like, these are all actual just agency owners who have worked with us, and we've just got nothing but amazing clients that say amazing things about us. And that's not a bragging thing. But we started this back in November of 2021. It's now just at the end of January, so 3 months, and we've accumulated. And we've got all these testimonial videos from people. They just sort of fly at us, and we have to keep adding them to this funnel. And it's it's awesome, and I love it, and it makes me happy. And we're at the point now where we're actually so good that our calendar is pretty rammed, right? So we hardly have any times left for this week, and next week Monday's open and Tuesday's open. I had to open these because we didn't have any times there. So that's my story. Really, it's just a lot of work. Really, that's what I've learned in reflection from 17 until 23 over 6 years. And I'll be 24 in a couple of months, so really it's a little longer than that. But really what I've learned, and to scale, now that Imperium Agency is now basically a 7-figure consulting business. And NorthFlow, we've built it to that point as well. And what I've learned after scaling 2 businesses to 7 figures is it's just work. There's no magic pill. There's no silver bullet. There's no such thing as talent. There's no such thing as miracles, or none of those shiny objects do anything. It's just getting up and getting at it and staying sane. And I really think that the only thing that matters is doing the work and doing nothing but the work and selling your soul. If you're not willing to sell your soul for a few years, then your soul will be sold to people who you work for. That's an interesting thing, actually. If you're not willing to sell your soul for yourself, then what will happen when you get older is you have to sell your soul to others for them to pay you. And that's just getting a job. That's getting a job from my perspective. There's nothing wrong with 9 to 5s, and I don't see anything wrong with them at all. But for me, they don't work because it feels like every day I went to that apprenticeship and did that job for someone else, I was selling my soul. But I wasn't at the same time because I was doing all that cold calling. So that's really me. That's my story. I think in summary, I can sort of just give you the main things that have really contributed to me. If I come back here. So I think in summary, so from 17 to 23, so I've built 2 7-figure businesses. I've probably read about 400 books. And I don't know how many hours of work I've done, but I've probably averaged 60 to 80 hours a week for the past God knows amount of times. And the other interesting thing is I've probably burned out 100 times, right? This sort of work and this discipline you can't escape it without burning out. And I've just withstood a lot of pain. Now, the thing with this is I don't want this video to come across as a narcissistic, egotistical amalgamation of my own self-love. None of this stuff really matters. It's my past, and it's what's built who I am now, but I'm far more concerned with who I'm becoming next. So I look back on this and I can reflect on this and recognize that this is the journey that I've taken, and this is the path that I've trod. But really, I don't really think about it too much because my eyes are now focused on the next 5 years, right? Which is going to be Charlie Morgan at the age of 29, just before I hit 30. And if you guys are wondering, what do I want to do between this point? Well, I want to build an 8-figure business. And I want Imperium Agency to scale to 8 figures. And that's really my North Star for the next 5 years. And I've learned that scaling and building businesses is not about initially I was angry and I was just motivated by fear and envy and pain. But now I'm just more motivated by self-development, and I see money and business as a vehicle for me to attribute the level of success I've been able to achieve. And I quite enjoy myself in the process. And so that's where I've been. The next goal is 8 figures, and really it's just work. Like, if I didn't have the fucking gall to wake up at 5 every day, make 3 hours of cold calls before that apprenticeship job, cold call on my lunch, cold call in the evening, and sell in the evening, then I wouldn't have won. I wouldn't say I've won by any stretch of the imagination. You don't really win in business. You can only just beat yourself, right? But I wouldn't have made progress, and I wouldn't be where I am today. So for those of you who have actually watched this to the end and listened to this, really the main takeaway is just to know that work is the secret, and that you can work your way out of pretty much any situation, but you have to work prudently. I'll leave you this with a story in closing. Once upon a time, a helicopter was flying over a forest, and on the helicopter there were 5 engineers and a scientist, and the helicopter crashed into the forest, and it crashed onto the forest floor, and the forest was thick, and the 1 scientist and the 5 engineers who landed, they didn't actually see, like, they couldn't see anything. They were just surrounded by leaves, and what happened is the engineers, they got out of the helicopter, and they had these knives or these machetes in case they crashed for whatever reason. And the engineers, they all thought, right, okay, let's just start chopping. We got to work our way through this problem. We've got to get out, and the best thing to do is just to hustle and grind and work hard. And so what they do is they start chopping away, and they just start chopping. And the scientist, he sits in the helicopter and he thinks, how can we make sure that we're working in the best way possible? Because hard work doesn't just do you what, like, it's not the main thing. Like, the main thing is knowing where to work hard. And so the scientist doesn't fall into the category of just chopping away and chopping away and chopping away. What he does instead is he gets out the helicopter and he climbs the nearest tree, the tallest tree he can find. And the scientist gets to the top of the tree, and he does a 360 across the whole forest. And what he sees over in the northwest is a small village and civilization with water and food and cattle and a farm. And he sees them over in the northwest, right? And what he does is he turns around and he looks down and he sees that the engineers are chopping their way through the forest, working really hard, and they're going all the way to the southeast in the wrong direction, in the complete opposite direction they should go. And the lesson of that story is that don't just think because you're working hard that you're making progress. Take a second to look at your life from a 30,000 foot view, or from the top of the tallest tree you can find. Look at what you actually want and your goal, and then you come back down from the tree, and then the scientist climbs down from the tree, he picks up a machete and he starts hacking his way to the northwest, and he goes and he tells the engineers to put their attention into this direction. That's a really important story, because I knew that not only did I have to work really hard, but I knew I had to work on the right thing. So if I was just aimlessly pursuing everything and doing everything, I knew that all I had to do was make 100 cold calls a day for my business for 6 months and sell a higher ticket retainer to one type of gym and sell one type of thing. And that's all I had to do for 6 months to build to build 10K a month, 8K a month. And I did it. And like, I could have worked on loads of other shit and built myself a fancy website and built myself a fancy funnel and built a personal brand, but I didn't. I just worked in the right direction. And so that's a really important lesson that I think you should probably bear in mind. But that's everything. I want to also, once again, shout Bo out. Bo doing Borgans is his name. Bo, mate, without you, mate, there's no way in how I could have done what we done. And I've learned that partnering with the right people who have your best interests at heart and have similar value and goal alignments with yourself is another really important thing. But I've also learned that you can't force partnerships, and they have to manifest out of need, not out of want. So I needed Bo and Bo needed me, and that's why we were a match made in heaven. And so Bo, I love you, mate. And also to anyone else watching who's a client of ours, I love you as well, because I love you for putting your trust into Imperium and letting us help you grow. And I love you for allowing us to manifest our potential and build awesome products for you, because it means the world to me to help you and grow. For anyone watching this video who is struggling and wants to build and grow an agency, then you can always use the first link in the description to book a call. There's no course, 997 course, there's no funnel, well there's a funnel, but there's no webinar play or anything like that. We have a course, it helps you get clients. You can buy it if you want, you don't have to. But if I had that course when I was 17, I probably could have cut out 5 years of pain and just made the process a lot easier. And so the mission we have for Imperium really is just to make building and growing an agency less painful than it has to be. And that's also the mission of this YouTube channel. And so I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's been a long one, but if you liked it, you can like the video because then that trains the algorithm to show you videos like this. And also you can comment, because if you comment, it shows me that you like the video and you might tell me what you want to see. And also don't forget to subscribe because I release more videos like this. And that's that. So I love you to pieces. Thanks for listening to my ego for the past hour. Although I have actually quite enjoyed making this video. It's been rather therapeutic. But I hope this answers the questions for everyone who kept asking me to sort of talk about my background. So that's everything, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.